I have fallen so deeply in love with this film. It is hauntingly beautiful. The performances are just so exquisite. Just congratulations.
Thank you so much. That's really kind. Thank you.
There's a really powerful shift that happens when Sophia meets Ingrid. It was quite extraordinary when and how you chose to breathe more life into her emotionality and when to rein it in and keep it closer to her chest. Can you talk about kind of the inner and outer life of this character and playing with freeing her emotionality versus restricting it?
That is such an interesting question. Thank you. Um, um, well, I think so much of Sophia's whole dynamic, like you say, oscillates between how much she feels and or how much she allows herself to feel in a moment and what she um shows to the world and how she exteriorizes it. So it's um it's really a scene by scene thing and it's a moment to moment thing and Rebecca was very good at observing and handling that and letting Vicky and Fiona and I and Vincent as well um play the moments, live in them, and she was sort of watching us and observing us and then would come in with very specific pointers as to how we could maybe specify a certain look or amplify or lessen something. And there is a musicality to it, and also the way that the film is edited now, I have to say, is different to how it was written on the page originally. So the crescendo effect was different, but not uninteresting because the sort of the fever dream aspect, I suppose, is amplified between the two, between Ingrid and Sophia. You don't really know what's true and what isn't. You end up not really trusting. You end up not really trusting either of them. You don't know what's tangible. And so that as a spectator, that can be quite uncomfortable, I feel, and quite discordant because we're used to sort of having a sort of a linear-ish trajectory with a few surprises along the way. But this, to me, feels quite staccato. And like you say, sometimes there's a real outwardness and a real clumsiness, dare I say, with how Sophia expresses herself and how she tries to ask questions and be curious, almost like she's trying to play grown up a little bit and trying to ask the right thing, do the right thing, and then can be really, I think, affected by a presence as strong as Ingrid. I mean, you've seen Vicky, we all know her and love her acting, and she has such natural charisma that it's very hard to take your eyes off her, and you sort of want to take your lead from her. And so for the story and these characters, it made a lot of sense. I was able to take my cues off of her, and she's very surprising, and she's not someone who um she's someone who will sort of do her own thing and has her own music, and you sort of playing Sophia, I was able to sort of playing along with that, and that was quite wonderful. And then you have to find moments where Sophia would sort of stand up for herself a bit more and be a bit more impulsive, even in a really clumsy way. I have to say, it's not now I'm talking a lot, but
Oh no, I love
it's
it.
not a it's
Please.
sorry, please, that's the point. um
Yes.
it's not, yeah, yeah, that's the whole point. It's not a very comfortable thing because Sophia doesn't really get anything right, so to speak. There's nothing cool about her. There's nothing in place or anchored really about her. She's good at caring for her mother, although she's suffocated by it, and she cares for her mother deeply, and the tether is really strong, and there's humor there, and there's real um Rose is so charming and has her moments, her quips and her humor and everything. So you do find her endearing, as infuriating as the whole situation is. So when Ingrid comes along, I think there is genuine fear and uncertainty because I don't think Sophia's ever been faced with that
Mhm.
rhythm before and that dynamic. Um, so it's like a challenge. It's like a challenge not only to be swept off her own feet, but also to sweep someone else off her feet or try to in
Mhm.
some way and make an impact on someone. It's like wanting to leave a legacy with someone, I suppose. And
Yeah.
they talk about their childhoods, they talk about their lives. And Sophia tries to talk about what she's studying about because that's all she really has that's her own. And even that is sort of a surface level thing almost. It's like something she's reciting. It's not something she necessarily really cares about. Perhaps something she's obsessed with, but for the wrong reason. So there are all these moving parts that mean that, yeah, when Ingrid comes along, it's a real like shock to the system. And then what do you do with that information? How do you process it, and how do you give back to that, you know?
Oh my gosh, 100%. Oh, that was all so beautifully said.
I don't know if it made any sense. I'm
It
sorry.
did. It's wild because not to get too personal, but I'm back in my childhood home for the summer, which,
Mhm.
evokes so many feelings. And
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about memory and kind of how it is very much like a fever dream. And I think that's why this film feels so tangible and so grounded, although it is playing with reality and all of what you said. It's because how we sort of, when we look back on these kind of formative times in our lives, everything does feel crescendoed. It does feel kind of grand and clumsy. And I've just been feeling, I think that's why watching this film at home just really, it was
So interesting.
haunting. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
it was.
really, but you're right. There's the memory, and memory is such an important part of this film as well. Thank you for saying that, because you are also reliant, you're discovering everything through Sophia's eyes almost. So the memory aspect of what Rose chooses to remember and what Rose chooses to share with Sophia about her own family, about their own past, about who her father is and how they were together and how in love they were or not, whether they used to play chess at night or not. Like there are all of these very
Yeah.
contradictory things. And as you were saying, that's so interesting that you're in your childhood home, but sometimes you can feel like you regress back into a teenage state. And as you said that, it occurred to me that maybe Sophia has never really left that teenage state because she's always been her mum's carer. So she is constantly in a state of regression, trying to take little steps forward and trying to study something and trying to have a smoke and like do these kind of semi-rebellious
Mhm.
things that you should be doing when you're 15, not at like 27, 28. It feels like everything's a bit stilted and a bit late in her development process as a person. So that's very interesting that you said that. I hadn't really put two and two together, but the memory thing is super key.
Yeah, so powerful. That yearning to
Yeah.
grasp onto something and to
Yeah, and
feel
Ingrid's
something.
relationship to her sister and the memory of that and what that
Mhm.
means and how she interprets that and what Sophia sees that as. You're sorry, I was just butting in, but yes.
No, please. I always say I don't like to do an interview. I like to have a conversation. So you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Great.
Um, it's so cathartic watching female characters, especially kind of accepting their rage and giving a voice to it. I think, regardless of what one's interpretation of the ending of this film is, it's brilliant. No matter how you feel about it, what you take away from it. But Sophia is reclaiming kind of what was stolen from her mother, what was stolen from Ingrid, and making a choice and like reclaiming that autonomy, um, whether you agree or not. I would just love to know because the ending is such a culmination of her journey. Like, what was going through your mind as you filmed that scene on the road that night? Oh,
Um,
I'm
well,
sure so much, but like,
yes, a lot. And also that was uh BTS Secrets. That was our first scene with Fiona. So that was our first that was our first like back in
introduction.
the fire, like night shoot doing that scene. So we were appropriately exhausted, and I think the nerves were so high for both of us because it's obviously the stakes are so high in that moment, as you know. So a lot was going through our head, but actually in the moment, because of the space we were in and the physicality of it and what's involved in it,
Right.
you it was quite primal and
Mm,
quite releasing, and even the kind of our voices changed and cracked differently, and I felt quite weirded out by it. It was quite haunting because there was something really like you were saying, it is a release, and it's a real release, and it's scary, and and you don't really know where it's going to go, and so I would say, yeah, it felt quite primal, and it felt messy, um and
yeah.
a little
Oh,
dangerous. Well, definitely a little
right.
dangerous. Yes. So yeah, I don't know if that makes any sense, but the
No,
state
it does.
we were kind of like we were already vibrating off of whatever was going on in the air at that moment, and we were like, challenging each other and pushing each other to do more and more, and the more takes we did, the more we were like, it was ramping everything up.
No, it
So
was absolutely gorgeous. It has not left my memory. It was, I'm sure you've been hearing a lot of this. It was just a stunning, stunning performance. You should be so proud. It took my breath away.
thanks so
And so interesting to know that that was the first scene that you guys filmed. And it does, I'm sure then it's like getting your body and your brain kind of releasing from that to then
yes.
so
Yeah.
fascinating.
It's fascinating, and it's fascinating. That's what what we start that the physical bodily element of that
Yes.
represents, and then going back to the house
The
and
repression.
and weirdly, and we were talking about this with Fiona when we first started, talking about this film and making sense of it after, but it was interesting how we felt reassured to be in a house
Mhm.
together as these characters, which sort of reflects how these two people feel, is that they need each other and they find solace in
Mhm.
each other's company and in the confinement of that very low ceilinged house where the wheelchair doesn't fit between the table and the sofa, like nothing fit. It was all, but it was comforting after that because
Right.
anything else outside of that is terrifying to them.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that was really interesting to play with and not to get like, corny and actory, but it was very
I
interesting
love it.
to be in a confined space
Right.
versus that open road and that
Right.
tempestuousness.
Because for Sophia, there is like, and again, you play this so beautifully, the dichotomy of there is like, you can see it, there's a discomfort and a comfort in that home with her
Mm,
mother. And the way that you move back and forth with that, even in the beginning, is just, like I said, it's exquisite. It's just brilliant work.
thank you so much. You're really lovely. Thank you for
Oh
saying
my gosh,
that.
well, it all comes from the
Thank you.
heart.
Thank you.
I have to wrap soon, which is like devastating because I could talk about this forever.
Devastating. It's lovely to talk about it and make
Oh,
sense of it together and converse because it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a tricky film and it's discordant and it's not really, you know, there are so many elements that are quite jarring and aren't comfortable to watch because like why are you acting like that and why are you saying that thing and there are so many, but I also feel like that's quite truthful because no one acts clearly or with clarity all the time in life, obviously, otherwise it would just be a plain sailing, easy thing. So I
yeah.
suppose seeing that kind of roughness and clumsiness on screen, and all of these characters, by the way, they're all, Sophia definitely, but all of them have an inherent clumsiness to them,
Hmm.
is quite refreshing in a way because you don't really know what's coming next. And I like that. And I like being surprised. And I like believing. And the mother-daughter relationship specifically, will I think it will ring true, or certain elements of it will ring true for a lot of people, whether you're a carer or not for your parents.
Hmm.
If you're the daughter of a mother somewhere out there, there are certain elements that I think people will respond to. And that's always interesting. So
Oh,
yes,
yeah. I always say like the best stories, they create empathy, they educate, they connect, they make you reflect. And it's so true. No matter where you are sort of in the spectrum of Sophia and Rose, you can profoundly relate to their dynamic in one way or the other.
yeah,
And it's like exactly like films like this do make us feel a little uncomfortable because it, forces us to question, it forces us to reflect, but like that evokes and creates growth. And like, what's the point of it all if we're not growing?
exactly right. Exactly.
Right?
Well said.
So there you go.
So there we go. We've
So
solved it.
we figured it all out.
We
Oh my
figured it
gosh.
all out
Well, it's a
fine.
perfect place to end because we did it.
We did it. Yay.
Oh my gosh, Emma, this
Thank
has been
you so
so
much.
wonderful. Thank
You're
you.
so
Thank you.
lovely. Thank you for your questions and thoughtfulness. It
Oh
was really
my gosh, my pleasure. Thank you for your time.